Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, the 1st of January, 2020. I hope you all had a wonderful New Year celebration. We are in the hangar this morning. What time is it here? It's about 9:25. We are working today on a couple of different things. When I moved into this new hangar, there was some ceiling fan work that I wanted done, some lighting work that I wanted done. And had an electrician come in to install these fans, and I put the switch box, and I'll go over all that in a minute. The plane, while he was doing that, I had to move the plane outside, and it was snowing. So we're here today. Two reasons. One, I wanted to talk and show you guys. I've been asked a number of times to do a more in-depth review of the Comanche landing gear. So I thought I would walk us through that on a very high level. I'm not a mechanic. This is something Heritage Aero. Cliff has a channel on YouTube, not super active. I think his son is starting to do more with it, where he would be in a much better position to post technical videos on this stuff. It's not my area. I'm not the most mechanically inclined guy. Wanted to just walk around, talk about the new hangar, and do a quick video on the Comanche landing gear. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the comments below. I'll answer what I can, but like I said, some of the technical stuff is a little bit beyond me. Let's start real quick. We're going to do I'll just show you the new hangar. On Moline, there's one row of hangars that are larger than a normal T hangar. They're insulated, or most of them are. I think there's one or two that are not insulated, and they have heat. The heat is nothing fancy. It's just a roofed hanging unit that so far has cost me the utilities, or I think I'm at $64 a month, but I don't run the heat all the time. A couple of reasons. One, it would be very expensive to try to heat this, because it's still a hangar. It's not a tight home. So I don't run it all the time for that reason. And two, below freezing is actually good for the engine if you're not flying a lot, which I don't do in the winter. Water can't hurt and rust the motor when it's below freezing. So what are some of the changes that I did? Well, we have a couple of things. One, I put in a new thermostat here that I set for 55. The night before I want to come out to do something, I fire the heat up remotely. Now, how do I do that? And that's where the electrician came in. So over here at the electrical panel, I had the electrician install that switch box that I was using before for the cabin heat and the engine block heater. Well, what he's done is he's tied that rooftop unit into, let's see, this switch, or no, that's the power. No, that's the outlet, into this switch. So that rooftop unit is now, when I hit number 1, it turns on the power to that rooftop unit, which then fires over, and overnight it warms the hangar up. The second outlet is now running what it was doing before. It's running the engine block heater and my, it's an engine air conditioner. It's called Black Max, I think. You can find it online. They used to be built down in Florida. Now they're built somewhere out in Ohio, I think. Black Max Ultimate Engine Saver. It's a dehumidifier. It cools the air down, just like you set a can of beer or soda pop on a table in the summer. You get condensation. Well, that's in essence what that's doing. Is it's cooling the air down, taking the moisture out, and pumping it into the engine through the breather, the oil breather line. So those are the two big changes. The hangar is really you know, insulated ceiling, walls. These two end walls on the other side, there are hangers that have insulation on them, so there was no insulation on this side. But I did check, they're both insulated on the others. Lighting, I had him install a couple spotlights up there, put LED, 100-watt LED bulbs in. They're not really 100 watts. They put out 100 watts, but I forget how much these. And then install 2 ceiling fans to blow the heat down to where, of course, where we are, which is important. Now, it does have water in the hangar. I don't know if you can see that pipe, standpipe back there. But there is water in here, so you could wash. Then there's a floor drain. You could wash the plane in here with water, but I don't use water. I'm going to use. I think I did a video on this a couple of years ago. I use what is this stuff called? Here, Wash Waxall from Aero Cosmetics. I don't know if you guys can see that. There we go. And it's literally spray it on, take some rag in a box, wipe it down, and then I take you know, some terry cloth towels and just shine it up. Does a real good job. And then for the undercarriage, there is a belly wash that they sell, which does a really good job. And I know I've done a video on this stuff before. But you know, feel free to check that out. That just happens to be what I use. There are other stuff. There's a fella up in Chicago that makes something. I can't remember his name either. But anyway, that's the hangar. Those are the updates that we've done, and kind of how the plane is now living in the wintertime. The door is insulated. I did want to point that out. This is kind of I've seen before where they have the insulation that's like on the walls here. It's batten, like you'd have in the roof of your house, with these metal clips that pull it tight. These are very sharp here, these little metal things that poke through. They've had those. I've seen those on the door. Whoever insulated this, what they did was they took styrofoam panels and cut them and laid them in, and then it's siliconed in. Now I still have these metal pieces, and you can feel the difference. Like I said, I wouldn't want to try to heat it full time. It would be an expensive endeavor, and there's no point. Nobody's in here 98% of the time. And the plane actually, like I said, when it goes below freezing, engines don't rust anyway. Now, I did want to talk about the Comanche landing gear. So that's it for the hangar. Let's climb under the plane. And I'm going to go through the parts of the gear real quick, and kind of the motions and the things that we look for. I am going to need... Got my phone here, so we got some light. Let me disconnect the camera, and then I can hold it by hand. We'll talk to you guys in a second. Okay, folks, we're going to start off talking about the Comanche landing gear inside the plane, which is where the transmission that extends and retracts the gear is, and of course where the switch gear is. So let's go ahead and climb up in here, and I'm sorry my camera work is going to be horrible. I thought maybe I should just record this on the iPhone, but sorry if anybody gets motion sick. Okay, so I turned on my light here. So in the panel we have the switch and 2 indicator lights that show gear up and gear down and locked. Those lights are controlled by squat switches. There's 3 switches on the landing gear, and when we're underneath the plane, I'll point out where they're at, what they look like. And as long as all 3 of them are activated or deactivated, that shows you, so that one light says yes, all 3 gear are down locked, or all 3 gear are up. Now, that switch controls a transmission. I hope you guys can see this. That is under, let me rotate this plate here. So pilot seat is here. Fuel switches are here on the floor. Can we see that? So this plate you pull up. If I was sitting in the pilot seat, I'm going to do it from the passenger seat so we can get there's a little latch here on the floor. You pull this cover up. And now Piper was smart enough to put the directions for the emergency gear extension right here on the back of the panel. So in an emergency, you don't really have to think too terribly much. You just follow the directions. And an emergency gear extension in a Comanche, unlike a Bonanza, is actually pretty easy. There's no pumping involved. You don't have to sit there and turn a bell crank or anything. You reduce the aircraft speed not to exceed 100 miles an hour. You place the landing gear selector switch in the center position. So this is a 3-position switch. I don't know if you can see that or not. It has down, which is where it currently is, center, which is basically off, and up, which pulls the engine up, or pulls the gear up until they hit the limit switch. And then the electric motor shuts off. So in essence, you just put it in the neutral position. You disengage the motor by raising the motor release arm and push forward through full travel. So down here, I don't know what you guys are seeing here. This is going to be interesting. Maybe I should have done it with the iPhone. So here, underneath this panel, this is where the electric motor is that drives the landing gear. What they're talking about you pull up on is this red switch here, or this red handle. This red handle disengages the transmission, which is behind this panel here. You got to take seats out to get to it. I'm not going to go through that. Right? So to disengage that transmission, and it's a worm gear. It spins like an Archimedes screw. Extends this, that Archimedes screw extends this arm forward, which pushes the gear, and I'll show you the underneath. It pulls on cables, which pulls on a shaft, and I'll show you all that underneath there. But to disengage the transmission from the extension arm, that's what this red thing is. So you flip it up, and there's a couple of different things that you can jiggle around with if it doesn't come up all the way. Then we release the transmission. The gear will fall partially down. This lever, actually, when the gear is up, lays on the floor. It rotates back, and maybe one day I'll show that in flight. But what you do is when you disengage that transmission, this is going to come up a little bit because the gravity is going to pull the wheels down a little bit, right? And you're at 100 miles an hour, not to exceed. Then you extend this arm, although it'll be this way, and you muscle it, and that's more like a Mooney setup where it's a lever. You're levering the gear up, and then the bungee cords will help pull it over the center. And I'll show you where the bungee cords and all that are. Now, once you're done extending this handle and pushing it all the way forward, you should get the down gear light come on when the gear is down. The limit switch will say the gear is in the down position. That's it. So that's from the cockpit. Slow it down to 100. Disengage the transmission from the arm. This will be laying this way. Crank it and pop it in, and that'll pop the gear down. Then you land, and you stop on the runway and call a tug to tug you, because you don't want to put side load on the gear, because the only thing that's holding them over center at that point is the bungee cords. And we will see those next. Talk to you in a sec. Okay, we're back, and we're now going to slide underneath the plane. I got my handy dandy crawler out here, and I'm sorry once again for the camera work. Okay, the landing gear on a Comanche. Let me see if I can get that lit up properly. So we have the brake calipers here. If I can figure out a way to hold this flashlight, that would be helpful. So brake calipers here, brake line. We have on 250s, you have a wishbone. I don't even know what the proper name is that holds the tire. On 260s and above, this is a single piece. This is a single piece here. They only have a single. Now, one thing that I did do was I reversed on some Comanches, and on mine was originally like this brake disc was on the other side. And so when the wheel pivots up into the wheel well, it would hang out in the slipstream. Well, there's a 337 that you can get, real easy mod to reverse that and tuck that brake disc up into the wheel well to get you a little bit less drag. And as you all know, the faster you go, the more the air pressure matters, the more the drag matters. So at its top speed on this plane, because of the drag, I need a lot more horsepower to go just a little bit faster. So anything you can do to reduce the drag, it's like getting free horsepower. It's exponential benefit. But anyway, okay, so the landing gear door is here. This is an arm that you can use to adjust it, and this is the arm that pulls this door closed. And the wheel sticks out, but this door comes to this section right here. I'm sorry for using the middle finger. These are two different fuel vents that you're looking at. They vent the fuel tank. So let's slide underneath, and I hope this isn't too crazy. And we'll get and look at the wheel well. Okay. Oh, I turned off my light. Sorry. There we go. So we have the yoke comes up, and a lot of guys, Comanche or Cherokee owners, will recognize this system. It's very similar to what they use. Unlike Cessnas, which use spring steel, Pipers have a tendency to use an oil gas chamber, which is in here. That's what this is. Let me see if I do this. This holds the oil and the gas, and you can see where you fill it from for that tube, and it's a shock absorber. Connects to the airplane front and back. There's these two brackets. Now in Comanches there is an issue with these, I think they're called trunnions, where they'll crack. So that's one thing that you want to look for, and that's one of the things when they rebuild these gear that they really inspect. I actually have a reserve one that I bought from Matt Crook down in Florida. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He rebuilds these and makes them real pretty. But I have one in reserve. There is a left and a right. I have one in reserve in case at some point in the future it does crack. So brake line goes up. You can see this black, and here's the hard line that runs to the reservoir and the brake pedal, that my handbrake. And then we get to the real actuator. Okay, so this rod here is what pulls, and there's cables inside the body that actuates this. So this rod here pulls on this, which here's the limit switch. Behind this little rubber cover, there's a squat switch that when the gear is extended depresses, and then it knows, hey, the gear is extended. And when it goes to the top, I think it extends all the way or something, and you know it's up. I'm not real sure, like I said, on the exact technical part. But this arm gets pulled that way, not straight in. It actually comes out like this. You can see this hinge here, and up at the same time. So it's a motion like this, where it folds back, comes, and that pulls the gear up then here into the wheel well. Now, part of the change, when we moved the brake from this side of the wheel to this side of the wheel, the mechanic cuts a little opening here in this thing and then puts a doubler on it. And that allows that to sit up nice and tight into the wheel well, reducing the drag. Now you're all asking, where's the bungee cords? This plate right here underneath is a set of bungees that right now, when the gear is extended, is relaxed. When you bring the gear up, those bungees pull tight. So those bungees are actually used to hold the gear open or down, and it over center. So this thing has a center position that once it comes over, those bungees will pull it the rest of the way and try to hold it extended. Now, with the transmission engaged, this is holding it. I hope that makes sense. With the transmission engaged and all the way out, this holds the gear open. If I have to disengage the transmission for an emergency gear extension, the bungee cords will help hold it over center so that the gear doesn't collapse when you land, because the transmission's no longer holding it. That transmission is very they're expensive one to rebuild. You're talking probably $4,000 to rebuild one of those transmissions. They're not cheap because they're complicated and they're one-off. Matt Kruk, once again, he will, if you send him your unit, he will rebuild it, and he's kind of the transmission guru for Comanches. He understands how all the math works and how all the arms and angles and all that works. I damn sure don't. So anyway, so that's the underside. That is the landing gear, the main landing gear of a Piper Comanche. It's exactly the same on the other side, just reversed, of course. There is a right and a left one of these. Now we go to look at the front landing gear, and I'm sorry, once again, the camera work. Okay, so on the front landing gear, you have, on a Comanche, you have the same tire size. We use 6-inch tires on all three. Same yokes. You can use that on any of the wheels. It's got a different, whatever the hell that thing's called. You got a couple of springs here, and this spring kit is expensive as well. The shimmy dampener is here, which so you don't get this wobbling. Here's the limit switches, and then the front gear trunnion. So it's very similar, except this one pulls straight back and up into this wheel well. And you can see the bottom of the motor, the back of the motor, the bottom of the motor is here. And that's it, guys. You know, exhaust on either side. And then, of course, all this attaches to the cradle, the engine cradle. That's how all that is held to the body, and I'm not going to get into that crazy. Here's the ducting. When I open the floor ducts, these are the tubes that bring the cool air into the cabin. Anyway, that's about it. Nothing. Here's the arm that actuates this whole mechanism from the transmission. And all three gear are interconnected with one set of wires, so that when the gear light comes on, you know the gear is actually up or actually down. Anyway, that's it. The belly of the plane, which I need to clean, and it's kind of getting cold in here. I'm going to turn the heat back on because it's too loud to record with it. That's it. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.